Week 3, Day 1, 1.
One of the biggest challenges will be to tackle a growing income gap that has seen almost 1 in 2 elderly South Koreans slip back into poverty. The economic miracle in the decades of breakneck growth after the Korean War lifted many South Koreans out of poverty, but deepened inequalities. The economic polarization of South Korean society is most extreme between the young and old. Traditionally, older Koreans have relied on the support of their families in retirement. The nation has the lowest savings rate in Asia as Koreans prioritize large immediate costs such as education. But multi-generational family structures have become less common as the country modernized and the elderly increasingly have to fend for themselves. 1. What will be the main challenge for the South Korean government? A. Rapidly aging society. B. Disparity in income levels. C. High educational expenses. Two. Between whom is the economic gap most conspicuous? A. Men and women. B. Young and old. C. Koreans and other Asians. Three. What has changed in South Korean society? A. The welfare system. B. The savings rate. C. The family structure.
Day 1, 2. As 30 passengers sat aboard a Zurich-bound flight here Monday evening, waiting for the last bags to be loaded, gunmen wearing police uniforms raced up to the plane and stole more than 120 packages of diamonds, worth at least $50 million, and possibly much more. Some of the 8 masked robbers stood in front of the jet plane with machine guns, pointing laser sights at the pilots, while others forced ground workers to open the plane's cargo doors. The thieves appeared to have detailed information about both the cargo and operations at the airport, and likely had help from people at the airport, according to an aviation security specialist knowledgeable about the incident. 1. When did this incident occur? A. Friday evening. B. Tuesday evening. C. Monday evening. Two. What was taken? A. Police uniforms. B. Precious stones. C. Detailed information. Three. What does this incident imply? A. Employees at the airport might have helped the thieves. B. The passengers' lives were put in danger. C. Security at the airport was very tight. Day 2, 1.
Security forces across the country went on high alert Thursday after at least 15 people were killed and more than 80 people were injured in 2 explosions in the city, in what state and federal officials suspect was a coordinated terror strike. The federal Home Minister said the government had intelligence inputs of expected blasts somewhere in the country for the past 3 days and had alerted all state governments. He didn't offer further details or say whether there was specific information about an attack. He said the 2 blasts took place within nearly 500 feet of each other and that the bombs were placed on bicycles in a crowded market in the neighborhood. The death toll is likely to go up because several people sustained critical injuries. 1. How many people were injured? A. Less than 80 people. B. Over 80 people. C. No more than 80 people. Two. Where were the bombs placed? A. On bikes. B. On a bus. C. On bags. 3. What will probably happen to the number of casualties? A. They will increase. B. They will remain the same. C. They will decrease.
Day 2. 2. In the 1990s, enthusiasm of ordinary Americans helped unleash a bull market, but the collapse of technology stocks in 2000, the housing bubble, and the financial crisis caused an epidemic of suspicion. Much of the overall stock market's recent rise was driven by the growing clout of hedge funds, high-frequency traders, and computer algorithms. Hedge funds and high-frequency traders generate more than half of all trading volume, according to a capital market research firm. A market that once was driven by humans is increasingly dominated by machines. The problem, as many individual investors and investment club members see it, stocks aren't fun anymore. They are scary. When stocks fall, ordinary investors feel pain. And when stocks rise, investors fear they will fall. Based on past periods of market trouble, psychology eventually will shift and optimism will grow, but frightened people can be slow to change. 1. What was the market like in the 1990s? A. A bear market. B. A bull market. C. A bond market. Two. What occurred in 2000? A. Collapse of high-tech stocks. B. Banking crises. C. Speculative bubble. Three. What will happen to investors in the future? A. They won't be pessimistic. B. They will never change. C. They will keep being suspicious. Day 3. 1.
One of the major resource development companies in Brazil shelved a $5.92 billion potash project in Argentina Monday, the biggest casualty yet of the mining giant's austerity effort prompted by slumping iron ore prices and billion-dollar write-downs. The Rio Colorado mine was expected to produce 4.3 million metric tons of potash per year, making Argentina one of the world's leading producers of the potassium-based fertilizer. But it has been under review since last year for cost-related reasons, and the company suspended work on the mine in late December. In the current macroeconomic environment, the economics of the project are not in line with their commitment to discipline in capital allocation and value creation, they said Monday. The company left the door open for the venture, saying it plans to keep searching for alternatives that enhance the economics of the project. 1. Which country does this company come from in this news? A. Argentina. B. Brazil. C. Colombia. Two. How many metric tons of potash were they expected to produce in a year? A. 5.9 million. B. 4.3 million. C. 9.2 million. 3. What does this company plan to do regarding the project? A. Put it on the shelf indefinitely. B. Look for other options. C. Close the door.
Day 3, 2. Sales of new vehicles in the U.S. continued to rise in February, albeit at a slower pace than a year earlier, as the prospect of job cuts and tax hikes amid budget wrangling in Washington appeared to dampen car buying at month's end. U.S. auto sales rose 3.7% to 1.2 million. The rate of sales, adjusted for seasonal fluctuations, equates to a full year of sales of 15.38 million, according to a research company. Auto sales have been one of the most consistently positive economic indicators over the past 3 years, rising steadily from a historic bottoming in 2009, when sales fell 6 million units below the trend of the previous decade. Buyers have been steadily returning to the market, many pushed into a purchase by the age of their vehicles, which has reached an average of 11 years, according to another research firm. 1. What seemed to prevent people from buying cars? A. Pay cuts. B. Tax increases. C. Budget shortfall. Two. What happened in 2009? A. Sales hit a record low. B. Sales rose 3.7%. C. Strong sales upturn. Three. How many years do people possess their cars on average? A. 12 years. B. 10 years. C. 11 years. Day 4, 1.
U.S. incomes fell the most in 2 decades in January as higher tax rates kicked in, though American consumers opted to cut back on savings. Personal incomes dropped 3.6% in January, the Commerce Department said Friday. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones Newswires expected a 2.5% decline. The decline more than reversed big gains in December when companies accelerated payouts of dividends and bonuses ahead of January tax increases. Many economists expect incomes to resume their slow growth after a bumpy couple of months. Generally, if Americans have less money in their pockets, they spend less on goods and services. But personal consumption expenditures, which measure purchases ranging from cars and clothes to health care and travel, rose 0.2% in January, in line with economists' expectations. Consumers cut back on big-ticket items but spent more on services. When inflation is factored in, consumer spending rose 0.1%. 1. Why did personal income drop? A. As a result of the high jobless rate. B. Because of the financial crisis. C. Due to tax increases. Two. What do many economists forecast for incomes? A. They will go back to slow progress. B. They will keep growing quickly. C. They will remain about the same. Three. How much did the consumer spending rate increase after adjusting for inflation? A. 2.5%. B. 0.1%. C. 50%.
Day 4. 2. Europe's common currency has left the continent's southern countries depressed, indebted, and struggling to compete internationally. But even in the tumult of Italy's national election campaign this month, the question of Euro membership isn't being seriously debated. In Italy, as in Spain, Portugal, and other crisis-hit countries, popular support for the Euro remains strong. Across Europe's southern rim, people recoil at the idea of returning to national currencies, fearing such a step would revive inflation, remove checks on corruption, and derail national ambitions to be part of Europe's inner circle. Such fears outweigh the bleak growth outlook that has prompted many U.S. and U.K. economists to predict a split of the currency. 1. What is the predominant opinion among Southern European countries regarding the euro? A. Object to the euro. B. In favor of the euro. C. Remain neutral about the euro. Two. What does recoil mean? A. Back off. B. Show interest. C. Being scared. Three. Why are people afraid of returning to national currencies? A. Create deflation. B. Plunge into stagflation. C. Restart inflation. Day 5, 1.
January 2013 recorded by far the highest levels of air pollution in recent years in Beijing. Judging by the statistics, the smog that engulfed China's capital was as inevitable as it was apocalyptic. Though the government only began reporting concentrations of harmful fine particulate pollution earlier this year, concentrations of a key precursor, nitrogen dioxide, have been significantly higher than 2008 levels for each of the past 4 years. China can reverse this downward spiral, but only by committing to the kind of real transparency and enforcement that have historically been in short supply. 1. What is this news about? A. Land pollution. B. Air contamination. C. Photochemical smog. Two. When did the government start reporting concentrations of harmful fine particulate pollution? A. Earlier last year. B. Later last year. C. Earlier this year. Three. What has not been realized so far? A. True transparency. B. Full investigation. C. Compelling negotiations.
Day 5, 2. New research suggests average global temperatures were higher in the past decade than over most of the previous 11,300 years, a finding that offers a long-term context for assessing modern-day climate change. The study aims to give a global overview of Earth's temperatures over the past 11,300 years, a relatively balmy period known as the Holocene that began after the last major ice age ended and encompasses all of recorded human civilization. The research shows that a 1-degree temperature variation that took 11 millennia to occur since the end of the last major ice age has been replicated in the 150 years since the early days of the Industrial Revolution? 1. What new research was announced? A. Global warming grows in speed. B. A long-term context for reviewing past climate change. C. Average global temperatures were higher than ever. 2. What was the purpose of the research? A. To give a global outline of Earth's past temperatures. B. To analyze global climate change. C. To calculate Earth's temperature difference. 3. How many years did it take for a 1-degree temperature variation? A. 11,000 years. B. 13,000 years. C. 15,000 years. Day 6. 1.
New York, Paris, London, Hong Kong, and Sydney all rank among the top 10 cities for luxury living. But the costs of living there can vary widely, according to research done by an English real estate consulting firm. Of the global cities surveyed, Hong Kong is the priciest. Luxury two-bedroom apartments there typically sell for $4.81 million. The cost of consumer products is also high, with milk going for about $10.22 a gallon and gasoline selling for about $8.10 a gallon, according to the real estate consultancy. In New York, a typical luxury two-bedroom apartment sells for much less, $2.135 million. And consumer goods in the survey are far cheaper relative to Hong Kong. 1. What differs among those cities? A. Apartment size. B. Costs of living. C. Transportation. Two. How much is milk per gallon in Hong Kong? A. Around $10. B. About $8. C. Approximately $20. 3. Which city is not listed among the top 10 cities? A. Paris. B. Sydney. C. Shanghai.
Day 6. 2. A few years ago, when one of the biggest investment banks in the U.S. wanted to study whether FaceTime mattered among its call center teams, the big bank asked about 100 workers to wear badges for a few weeks with tiny sensors to record their movements and the tone of their conversations. The data showed that the most productive workers belonged to close-knit teams and spoke frequently with their colleagues. So to get more employees mingling, the bank scheduled workers for group breaks rather than solo ones. Some other companies are also turning to tracking devices to gather real-time information on how teams of employees work and interact. Sensors worn on lanyards or placed on office furniture record how often staffers get up from their desks, consult other teams, and hold meetings. 1. What is this study about? A. How to be more productive at work. B. How important face-to-face communication is. C. How to stimulate conversation among work colleagues. 2. What did they ask 100 workers to wear? A. Badges. B. Microphones. C. Microchips. 3. What do the sensors not record? A. How often they go out after work. B. How often they are away from their desks. C. How often they have business meetings. Day 6, 3.
Although people are trying to be more productive, an explosion in technology aimed at helping them manage their time and tasks may actually be making it harder. New productivity products have skyrocketed in the last couple of years. There is way too much out there to make sense of it all, says an editor-in-chief of a website on using technology to be more productive. Many people choose something that doesn't fit the way they think and work, or they jump from one tool to another, wasting time and energy. Rather than picking the right app or system on their own, people let themselves be directed by the latest and loudest. 1. What's the purpose of the technology? A. To help people manage time and tasks. B. To provide the right tool for work. C. To control people's productivity. Two. What does make sense mean? A. Comprehend. B. Utilize. C. Convince. 3. What do people tend to do when choosing an app or a system? A. They tend to choose the most time-saving device. B. They are attracted to the newest and hottest ones. C. They are fascinated by the latest task management system.
Day 6, 4. Turns out a good night's rest is good for business. 1/3 of American workers aren't sleeping enough to function at peak levels, and chronic exhaustion is costing billions of dollars in lost productivity, according to researchers from an American medical school. Managers at a growing number of companies are waking up to the problem, investing in programs from sleep hygiene courses to melatonin-regulating lighting to help employees improve their slumber. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates 40.6 million American workers, or 30% of the civilian workforce, don't get enough rest. And the scientists from the medical school estimated in 2011 that sleep deprivation costs U.S. companies $63.2 billion in lost productivity per year, mainly because of presenteeism, people showing up for work but operating at subpar levels. 1. What is the main cause of the problem among American workers? A. Chronic disease. B. Psychological issues. C. Sleep deprivation. 2. What are companies investing in? A. Welfare programs. B. Facilities for napping. C. Melatonin-regulating lighting. 3. How much do U.S. companies lose in productivity per year? A. $61.2 billion. B. $63.2 billion. C. $62.2 billion. Day 7, 1.
Breast cancer screenings are one of the most hotly debated issues in healthcare. A large part of the medical establishment agrees with the long-held view that annual mammograms are a necessity and should be routine for women over 40. That way, any abnormalities can be spotted and dealt with as early as possible. But a growing chorus of critics argues the tests aren't as useful as they're made out to be. Increasingly effective treatments have made it less necessary to spot trouble early, they say. And they argue the screenings create too many false positives and find too many cancers that will never matter to women, leading not only to unnecessary anxiety, but also unnecessary treatment. 1. According to most doctors, how often should women get mammograms? A. Once a year. B. Biannually. C. Once every year or two. Two. What is the growing criticism? A. Mammograms are overpriced. B. The examination is not that useful. C. Some abnormalities cannot be detected. Three. What have false diagnoses led to? A. Obsessive thoughts. B. Needless treatment. C. Unnecessary checkups.
Day 7, 2. 5 decades after the U.S. Surgeon General first warned of the hazards of smoking, researchers reported fresh evidence Wednesday of tobacco's devastating toll on the health of the U.S. population and of the benefits of quitting. 2 studies that looked at the effects of smoking over a lifetime found that both men and women who smoke were about 3 times as likely to die before reaching age 80 in one study and 75 in the other study, compared with those who never smoked. One of the studies found that women who smoke throughout their lives lose 11 years of longevity, compared with never smokers, while men lose about 12 years. Both studies found that quitting smoking at any time, but the earlier the better, helped offset at least some of the risk of early death. 1. How many years have passed since the first warning about the risks of smoking was issued? A. Half a century. B. 12 years. C. 3 decades. Two. What is 3 times higher for smokers than non-smokers before they become 75 to 85 years old? A. Probability of dying. B. Rate of morbidity. C. Degree of affliction. Three. If women smoke all their life, how many fewer years do they live? A. 13 years. B. 12 years. C. 11 years. Day 7, 3.
Stress can be good for body and mind, according to new research that found that changes in body chemistry and in behavior depend on how people viewed the nature of stress. It all depends on your attitude. In studies on investment bankers and students, researchers said when people see stress as debilitating, their bodies don't react as well as when they view stress as having positive effects. Stress is usually portrayed as having negative health consequences, but it also can aid in boosting the immune system and the speed of brain processing, even improving memory, previous research has shown. 1. What changes are set off depending on how you view stress? A. Attitude in general. B. Behavioral changes. C. Change in personality. 2. How is stress usually described in relation to your health? A. Encouraging. B. Undesirable. C. Stimulating. Three. What does stress help boost? A. Speed of brain processing. B. Appetite regulation. C. Ability to take quick action.
Day 7, 4. Smiling could be good for your health. Researchers are finding that wearing a smile brings certain benefits, like slowing down the heart rate and reducing stress. This may even happen when people aren't aware they are forming a smile, according to a recent study. The work follows research that established that the act of smiling can make you feel happier. Some research suggests only a full and genuine smile affects the body in positive ways. Other studies, though, indicate even a polite smile may be beneficial. Frowning also may have a health effect. Preventing people from frowning, such as with the use of Botox, can help alleviate depression, a recent study found. 1. What kind of advantage does a smile have? A. Stress avoidance. B. Decreased heart rate. C. Improved bloodstream. Two. What does genuine mean? A. Diplomatic. B. Pretentious. C. Sincere. Three. How can you avoid frowning? A. Cosmetic acupuncture. B. Botox injections. C. Aesthetic surgery.